Thanks, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm, again, as Bobby said, Shelly Kayette, our SVP of Global Partnerships with the Cavaliers. Happy to be here today to talk to you a little bit about how we are leveraging data and focusing on data to really drive our business in the sponsorship area. So, again, disclaimer and heads up, if you're here to see stats on Kevin Love or Colin Sexton, you're in the wrong session. But somebody has to pay those guys to keep them happy. So that's our area of the business. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what we're doing and how we're using data to help really drive that. So a few things just will kind of go back on before we get into the details is one, that the needs of businesses continue to grow and their demand for more data. So in the sponsorship world, our clients are demanding more data to justify the return on investments of our sponsorships. And we have to comply to that. We have to give them what they're asking for so they stay happy. I would also note that data traditionally has, although it's lived in other business sectors and even some in ticket sales in sports organizations, it has not lived in sponsorships. And what I mean by that, when you think of other business sectors, you think of banking, you think of manufacturing companies, even think of Nike as the retail giant that it is. If data fails for those companies, the company fails. They can't operate without data. Sponsorships, on the other hand, is a little different. We approach our business more personally, more customized. We meet with clients, we pitch them pie-in-the-sky ideas that then we try to bring to life. We can have 100 sponsors with our organization. All 100 contracts are extremely different. And so how do you automate that? How do you compile that and compile data to really tell that story? It's tough. And then I would just close with, on that note, that investments in sponsorships, it is growing though. It's been a movement over time. When we look at data and how we leverage data in sponsorships, we look at it in two different buckets. There's external data, so that's what is the client asking for and how are we proving our return on investment to them? And then there's internal data. How are we actually using data in our business to drive our business decisions and become more successful? So I'll start with data externally. As you can see here that we have done a good job in this area. We actually partner with companies like Wasserman, Turnkey. You can see on the upper left-hand side our partnership, legacy jersey partnership with Goodyear. We actually worked with Wasserman and put a significant investment to providing return on investment and showing what all of the assets in that deal is bringing back to them from a media value. Again, we do it with our naming rights partners and other partners that have required that level of return on investment. We also use data externally when you think of benchmarking with digital numbers, our digital stats. We have to show our clients that our metrics, when they do activations with us, exceeds anywhere else they may do activations. We've also used Nielsen. So as many of you know, Nielsen is a great evaluator of media. And so when we have, for example, we're looking at the health of our esports NBA 2K brand, they can actually show us what the value of that looks like. When we have TV visible signage in a deal, they can actually equate that to what the media value is and show that return on investment. In the bottom middle is also an example. We internally have a group that focuses solely on gathering impressions and data to show what every activation is returning for our clients for every partnership activation. So we've done a good job in that space. I think that attributes to our success. We, from a revenue standpoint, of all leagues, we have multiple teams. So there's the Cavs, we have our AHL team, the Monsters, we have our G League team, Canton Charge, and NBA 2K team, Cavs Legion. We rank, as you can see from the numbers, in the top of all of those leagues in revenue. That is, even when you think of the Cavs, 2 years after a very notable player has left, we still live in the top rankings. And that a lot is attributed to the return on investment that we can provide our clients. You have to justify it. We can't just go and activate without merit. So we've done a good job on the external side. Where we have not done a good job traditionally is on the internal side. So a little archaic there, but the first computer, that's really what I think about how we were living in the sponsorship world a few years ago internally and how we were using data. Excel sheets was our mode of tracking our business. That sounds terrible, I know, for most of you in the analytics world, but that's literally in sponsorships how we operated. It probably took me 5 spreadsheets to get a report into someone, so it's very time consuming and not effective. We even used a program, Stone Timber River, and this was, again, about 5 years ago. The program literally was a very vertical data program. All it did was take inventory and rate card and spit it back out. So it basically was an automated Excel sheet, is how I would look at it. So we had some work to do. When we looked at how we were, the opportunity we had to really maximize sponsorships, we looked at it in a few ways. One is, how are we going to use it to guide strategy? How are we going to use it to really, I would say, put data and analytics in our business organically? It can't just be a one versus the other. It has to really live organically. And then how are we using data to evaluate our business processes and behaviors? This is what my team looks like. A lot of different verticals. There's operations, there's activation, there's multiple properties. I talked about the Monsters and our Cavs Legion team. So how does data sit in the middle of this but connect to all of it, right? And this is what we do. We manage relationships, we drive revenue, and we provide best practices and experiences. Now, how do you use data for that? Anyone have any ideas? It's not easy, but I'll give a lot of credit to our analytics group, because this is what we put out forth. Started about 4 years ago and really dove into it these past couple of years. But one thing that we noted is that from our analytics manager, Elizabeth Cotter, her quote is that there's one source of the truth. Now, we're in sales. There's a lot of versions of the truth, right? We tend to go and learn how to story tell and really, again, when we think of big picture thinking, but for them, if we're going to go on this journey, we have to bring it back to one source of the truth, and our whole business lives around that. And that's going to drive revenue and business success for us. So I mentioned Elizabeth Cotter on our analytics group, also John Rodriguez, who's here today. Wave, John, stand up. It's been a big part of really launching this. But this is a quote that was in a case study that was released for them. And it says, with the right people in analytics support, along with a strong data focus, analytics is becoming an organic extension of sponsorships and helping the business make smarter business decisions. And that's really the core of where this all started. We look at this in two different ways. So one, what do we need to get it going? One is systems. So we worked with Microsoft Dynamics CRM, Core, Tableau reporting, and we had the systems in place. The big mistake we made is we put the systems in place but didn't have the personnel to run it. Sponsorship people running data is not a good combination. So we really invested, once we invested in the systems, we then made sure we got the right people, again with Elizabeth and John, to help go on that journey with us. It was then important from a leadership standpoint that myself, our president and CEO also were brought into the investment and time that it was going to take on the journey, but also that we got team member commitment. We looked at this in 3 verticals when we talk about how do we take the one source of the truth, the data, and make it work for everyone. And the first area is inputs. So really, what's the integration in the business process look like? So I think about how are we tracking data real time? Like I said, Stone Timber River was a very static system. How are we tracking activity and behaviors on a regular basis? And then how are we creating and seeing those efficiencies? These are some of the areas that we've been able to drive inputs, and I'm going to walk through just a few of them. Our sales pipeline workflow. So this was very important because this is the whole part of our business from selling from start to finish. How do we have that real-time data with 20 different reps doing 20 different things at all times across multiple properties? And so we sat with our analytics team and talked through the process, literally from when we call a deal hopeful, so when we're just talking high-level conversations, to when it's framed and we're actually putting assets together, to when it's pitched, proposed, to when it's closed, and even back to the negotiation process. All of that is now input in the system when it's happening. Then we look at it from a contract workflow. So I'm going to show this one because you think of contract, what does contract have to do with data? Well, back to just the real-time information we were looking for, we had one legal counsel, and I have 40 people on my team. So can you imagine what that looks like when somebody's trying to track down a contract, all right? So it's not efficient. So we literally sat with the same workflow process and created the input into the system where from the time the contract is created by our legal, to the edits, to the red line, to when it's out to a client, to when it's back in-house, we know at all times where it's at. So that input, again, was created to help that workflow. And then last, contact management inputs. This one was a very important one. Client relationships is the basis of our business. If we don't have good relationships, we're not going to be successful. And so we were able to extract and personalize the actual data of who our clients were. So every client is not the same. So you can see here that we were able to extract the decision maker versus a key executive. So a key executive could be someone in the organization, a COO that has influence, but is not the decision maker. We want to know who they are and we want to interact with them, but they're not going to be called when it's time to make decisions. So them versus a day-to-day contact. Anyone that is a client of ours, we know who and what they are. So for example, if our CEO wants to call a roundtable for our client CEOs, I don't have to take a spreadsheet of all of our clients, go to all of 20 reps, find out what they're doing, who the contacts are, try to put it together. We can now just say, okay, let's pull decision makers, or let's pull key executives. And now we can get that data real time in reporting. So these are a lot of different other ways that we're able to show inputs, again, through hospitality, all of our events, hard cost, finance and billing. But the one I'll highlight is the calendar in the bottom right. And this, when we set integration into the process, we sat with analytics, and John really led this charge. They had to understand our business for 365 days. What does it look like? And so he really understood what we were doing, what we needed to do, and what we wanted to get the information for, and built out a calendar that then we created more inputs, more reporting from, and now we know our business on a year-round basis. So then we move into output. So now we've got our inputs together, and again, those were just a few. But when we look at what's the visibility of our health, what is our executive leadership seeing? How do we manage the business? I'll talk through a few of those and what we came up with. This one's probably the most important one that actually I look at every day. The top the top left, an executive revenue report. This report shows every property that we have, ticket sales, sponsorships, all revenue leaders are on this report. It will show you what the revenue is and then where we are to goal with that revenue. It goes around once a week. It can also show what the revenue is versus what contracts are signed and what contracts aren't signed. So again, a lot of information that can come, but to keep all of our properties at visibility so we understand really what the health of our business is. On the top right side, you'll see our pipeline report. Specifically in sponsorship, that's really important because now I need to know what's out there to know what kind of success we're going to have. So I can see how many deals are framed, how many deals are actually pitched, how many deals are negotiating, and I can determine if I need to go back to our team and say, okay, we've got to get some more fish out in the pond, or if we're doing well and this is successful. From my head of revenue, he then doesn't have to sit and have one-on-ones just to get data, right? So from this list, the bottom portion of that report, every rep has every deal that they're working on and the specific activity of the most recent touch point that they've had with that client at any given time. So instead of using one-on-ones every week to gather data, we can now use those one-on-ones effectively to actually make decisions on, hey, we're doing great, we're pacing well, or maybe we need to do some more work. The bottom left is the weekly pulse report. This is only for our president and analytics team, myself and head of premium. It's literally a heartbeat of the business. Once a week, we sit for literally 15 minutes and say, this is where the business is this week versus where it was same day last week. And hopefully, this is how it's grown. Or if it hasn't, here's what some work we need to do. And then on the right side, I left about Excel sheets. But it used to really take us about 5 spreadsheets put together for all of our properties, all areas of the business to find out what our revenue projections are. Because you want to use historical data. I'm not going to use same data of where I was in 2018-19 versus where I was in 2017-18 when we were in the height of playing on the court, right? So the historical data now is more automated than it has been before. The finance and billing one I would just highlight, that one's been really important for us. So as the legal counsel had to come and find out where all the contracts were, finance had to do the same. And so what they were able to do was automate this so we know real time any contract, any payments that are overdue, 30 days, 60 days, and we had a collections problem. We had trouble tracking collections. And in 18-19, we had a 99% efficiency of our financial payments because of this system and the ability to see it real time. And then I'll lead into evaluation, leveraging data to make decisions. So now that we have the inputs and outputs, how are we really making effective decisions to be successful? And so this is an example rate card evaluation. So how we come up with rate card is we find out what the league average is and what's going on in the league, and then we sort of just throw a dart on the wall and say, we'll go there. Now we're able to actually put some metrics behind that. So the example up here, if I have an asset that's $67,000, and I can pull all of my contracts and see what we're actually putting against those contracts in the scope of the big contract, right? That's just one asset. So let's just say it's a sign in the arena. If the sign we're selling, rate card, $67,000, but I pull the report, this report that says we're actually only getting $47,000 for it on average, it's only 70% efficiency. So the question is it too high? Are we underselling it? Are we over-promising people in contracts? I can now make better business decisions about what we're doing because I can see what the evaluation is. We're doing the same thing with inventory management. One big thing in all sponsorship business is that other areas of the business don't know what we're selling, right? I'm sure if you have known sponsorship areas of the business, you've heard that before. So what we did is this report shows what's sold and what's pitched by inventory. If it's community relations, they have access to this dashboard. If it's game operations, they have access to this dashboard. So they can see at all times what's pitched and what's sold, and they don't have to come track someone in my area of the business down just to find out data. And then, we're really excited to look at what's next and how we continue to use these metrics and our data analytics to continue growing our business and moving forward. One area that we're looking at is they are really taking a keen focus on prospecting. So compiling data, industry stats, really utilizing platforms like Sponsorship, United, YouGov, ZoomInfo, really, but having it flow through analytics so that it's filtered and we can make smarter business decisions. One of the areas that we're working on right now is benchmark pacing. So this is something new that we've not done before. We know roughly when we sell deals. We know before the season, we typically sell more deals. When the season comes, it typically tapers off. That's a generalization, right? What we've been able to do is pull data to say that 2/3 of our deals are closed before October of the season, before the kickoff of the season. With this pacing, saying we're selling roughly 27% to close, we can now create benchmarking to show where we would need to be. Again, these are arbitrary numbers, but let's just say our percent to close is 27%. I now can sit with my head of sales and say, we need X amount of dollars out every month from the start of the season through the end of the season in order to get to our goal and have effectiveness and actually be able to reach our goal. So we're really able to take the data and make, again, benchmarking decisions to make us more successful as opposed to just kind of throwing it out there and seeing what sticks. And so, I think in summary, I would say that this process started, it's been a journey. It's really focused and let us make sure that we integrate data and analytics into the business process. It's not separate. Again, we live together. From an output standpoint, we're getting a lot more visibility from top down to everyone knowing the health of the business, where we need to work on, areas we need to work on, and areas we're doing great in. And then from an evaluation, we are making better business decisions because of the work of our data team's doing, an analytics team, and how we're incorporating that into how we're selling sponsorships internally. So again, just to summarize, the one source of the truth, we really are going by this model. It's created a lot of transparency amongst other areas of the business. It's created a lot of collaboration. You can see how we work with the legal team, again, with other areas of business and visibility. But more importantly than any of it, it's really helped us to make better business decisions. And so we're top in revenue right now across all our properties, but it's important that we sustain that and continue to grow that. And we really think that more focus on the internal side of data analytics is going to help us to get there. So in closing, just say some success. This was a core case study that went out that our Elizabeth and John were in, talking about the health of the business and how we're using data analytics and integrating that into our business. And we look to continue success from that to continue to drive our business to help have a competitive advantage in business and how we grow our business. So that's it. Thank you. Any questions?